Dan Wells, welcome.
Hi, how's it going?
It's very good. I'm very well. Very good to see you. It's been a long time.
It has indeed. Good to see you too. Been many years.
It has. It has. When was the? Because you used to stay at my place sometimes on race weekends
Ye-
at Sepang.
Yep, yep.
That must have been 2018, I think, the last time, or
Uh,
17.
it could have even been 17, I think, Ben. Yeah, because it was definitely 16, 17, and then I think 18. I think, yeah, I wasn't down in Malaysia so much from memory, but yeah, good times indeed.
Yes, true. Well, those good times are for another podcast, I think. I won't incriminate you here today. So well, it looks like life in Hong Kong is getting a little bit difficult during this time.
Yeah, I mean, the last couple of years has been really quite, yeah, a trying time for a lot of people. I think, from March 2020, the last time I was racing in Asia was actually in Biraram, Thailand. That was the final one which we got in just before everything kind of started closing down. And so, yeah, for Asian motorsport, it's been a bit of a rough ride. It's a real shame. But yeah, I've had to kind of divert to racing in Europe, but I'm still basing myself out of Hong Kong, and I'll be leaving for Europe at the end of this month, actually.
That's right, because you made an announcement this week about you're signing on again for one more year in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo Europe with Triple F
Yes.
Racing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, it's a really, really exciting time. Lamborghini has been super. I mean, I started racing the Lamborghinis in 2019 in Asia. That was with my teammate Philip Godori at the time. We signed actually to do 2020 Asia and Europe. So I was meant to be racing with Philip in Asia and then Oscar Lee, Taiwanese American driver, in the European series. But of course, that all kind of got canned, and then, yeah, so last year it was with Oscar in Europe, and this year he's thankfully chosen me again, and we'll be racing with FFF. So very, very exciting. Yeah, very exciting times.
So FFF Racing, if I'm correct, is that a Chinese team but based in Europe, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it's basically Fu Song Yang and Chinese businessman, but they base themselves out of Santa Gata. I need to get better with my Italian pronunciation, being based with Lamborghini this year. So, yeah, it should be a very exciting step forward in my career.
Was that last year? Was that your first time in full competition in GT racing?
It was my first full season, I guess you could say, because yeah, 19 it was only a part campaign. I think it was four races with Philip,
Okay.
and then yeah, so yeah, I hadn't even thought of that myself actually, but yeah, so it was my first full GT campaign, which feels funny, but yeah, I was kind of doing a lot of one-offs here and there over the last few years. Yeah, so this would be my second full season.
And you had a few podiums last year, and you won the final round at the World Championships.
Yeah, it was quite a wow. It was a very fun year, really, because after 2020, when we kind of didn't leave home, and a lot of everything was online, and then to go 21 and just have the whole year of, I say, close to normality and being able to travel and things. It was super. Oscar and I, we had a lot of podiums actually. It was a really bizarre one because once we landed in Italy for the first round at Monza, both of us hadn't been in a car for a long time. And, Monza, it's the fastest track on the calendar, and you're going straight in, no testing. And we ended up finishing fifth overall and second in class,
Wow.
which was actually, on the overall, it was the best result of the year. And then we carried it through. Oscar had a lot of learning. Developed really nicely, and it culminated in the final race weekend, which was the World Finals, where we had the Americans and the Europeans, and we took the win. So it was nice to go into my quarantine hotel with that trophy, I tell you.
Yeah, that was what, 21 days in Hong Kong, isn't it?
That one was 14 only. The others were 3 weeks. So yeah, it was. At least I had the trophy to look at in the hotel room.
True, true. In your little prison cell.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of Monza, so you've done Monza in the GT Lamborghini. Did you ever do
Yeah.
Monza in a single seater?
No, it was something which actually evaded me. Yeah, so Monza. It was actually my first time on track in Monza was in the Super Trofeo. But super track, a lot of fun to race at. Yeah, really enjoyed it, and I love the whole history of Monza, and the area is nice. Italy's lovely. Yeah, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, true. It's such a legendary circuit, isn't it? It's like the, I don't know, Disneyland for motorsport.
Yeah, I mean it was just so good to be able to go to the first round, and I was happy that we had a clean weekend, and it was just really one of those things that because we'd gone through year and a half of not doing anything on track and really kind of let's say nothing happening. It was kind of Groundhog Day like over here, to go out and to be able to race at Monza with a full grid and and to be able to have pizza, one of my favorites. It was it was just perfect. It was a really good weekend.
Did you race at Imola as well for the series?
No. So I think last year, because there was a little bit of a question up in the air on the calendar as to where they were going to go, and then I think it was settled on Monza. This year it was meant to be Monza again for round one, and then I think a few months ago the calendar changed, and so Imola for the first round this year. But we've done a lot of sim running. I've run a client there who was in a Porsche 3-litre RS. That was in Modena in 2021, but I've never driven on track there. Yeah, coaching and co-driving on a rally actually. So I've been to the circuit twice, but never been on track yet until what will be the first test day at the end of this month.
And did you pay your respects at Tamburello?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't actually have much time that day because it was the rally. The way that it works is you're only in a certain place for a very short amount of time. So, we were on track. We had the race. You get there, you have to set the car up, change the gearing and everything. And then you're out on track and then you're back. And then by the end of the day, then you've got to get to your next destination. So it's point to point. So it's not like we had a huge amount of time to hang around. It's very, rallies. I don't know how much you know on the rally side of things. I'm not that clued up, but I've done a couple of rallies now. I'm kind of getting into it, and it's very intense.
Yeah, true. No, we followed the Asia Pacific Rally Championship a lot on Pit Talk Asia. Yeah, they do a fantastic job, but I haven't been to a live rally race yet.
Yeah, it was a whole new world for me because I came from the world of single seaters, young drivers, and GT. All the kind of circuit based activities. Yeah. And then one of my friends, he's really into everything really, but like he loves his rally, he loves his classic cars, historics, all of this sort of thing, plus the modern cars. So he asked me one day, he's just like, Dan, would you mind? Do you want to come co-drive with me in a Lancia Stratos in Italy?
Nice.
Yeah, and I was like, well, my entire career, you never say no to anything. You always just, you figure it out. And I was like, absolutely, why not? So I did as much research as I could on being a co-driver, what it entails, and there's a lot to it, like a lot. I remember having, I immediately called Colin McRae's co-driver, Nicky Grist, and because Nicky used to supply me with my helmets in the UK, Stilo helmets, and had a conversation with him. What do I need to know? What do I need to learn? How can I prepare best for a first event? And it was you only get like 4 or 5 hours sleep a night, and it's just flat out. It's but it's so much fun. And of course, when you're in Italy and you're in a Lancia Stratos, you're treated like a god over there. Like it was just such a special week. I will never forget that. That's for sure.
A lot of motorsport fans. I mean, the whole co-driving thing. You've got to speak in code, right? There's a special, like a shorthand version for telling the driver what to do.
Yeah, so I mean, I've only done 2 rallies, and both of them were the Modena which is there's over 100 entries into the rally, and you have 2 different classes, one which is competition, and then I think the other one regularity. And regularity is basically if you want to take your nice car, but you don't want to push it too much. And then so when you do the on-track activities, you have to kind of try and do the same lap time each lap. So it doesn't matter how fast you are; it's just about how consistent. And then the competition side, where it's just about speed.
Right.
And we had this amazing race that year, and we were against I think it was a Porsche. I think he was in a Porsche. A really, really cool guy. I forget his name now. It's been so long. It was a couple of years now. But we had this intense battle. And you go from doing, your point to point, where you have to be able to, you get given a book, the road book. And so as co-driver, you have to mark off everything. So you'll have a tripometer on your dash. And so you've got to do each intermediate. So, let's say it says 0.3 of a mile, second exit on the roundabout. So you tick that off and then click the button. And then you've got your overall, and you need to make sure that you reset your trips at the same time, at the correct time. And then obviously you don't use Google Maps or anything, only if it goes very wrong, and then you try, but like we generally were very good like that. So we're fully on the trips, marking that down. And then once you get to the stage, you put your hands device on, you put your helmet on, and then you're basically a couple of minutes and then you're on the stage. And then from that, you've got the book, and you go through, and you might have 3 left, over crest, into 1 right, into chicane, and the timing, the communication with your co-driver. And I'm very fortunate. I have a great relationship with my driver, and I trust him implicitly with my life. We have so much fun on it. But when you're on the stage and you're just communicating and everything's kind of flowing, and we went from the first stage, we finished like 8th, and then the second was like 6th, and it was 5th, and then we managed to win. I think it was the final 3 stages that year, and we were just having such a ball with it. And you'd have sometimes you go through like a really fast sort of little chicane over a bump, through a bridge, like really sketchy stuff, and but the thrill is like nothing else. It just touches you like no other experience ever has, to be honest.
So are you saying the trip is like a warning? It notifies you of what's coming up next?
No, it doesn't notify. So it's just literally a way to measure the kilometers that you're doing. So you'll have 2. One of them is your intermediate. So let's say you go, you're straight out of the rally, and then you have to go left at the first junction, for example. It will be a picture. It's all drawn in picture form, right, for this particular rally. And then so you have to then, once you get to 0.3, you have to hit the trip, because if you forget to hit the first trip, your next instruction will say 0.2 right, but then if you're reading 0.6 instead of you get so, and then you'll have the overall, and so you have to kind of follow through the road but cross off each thing.
Right.
And it's normally an issue if you get onto like something, if you've got, it's not often, but if you get a little bit like 10 minutes of road where you don't really have to do anything, and you start having a bit of conversation with your driver.
10 minutes of road in the rally?
Yeah, because like if you're getting from like one Italian city to another, so you will be on a stretch of road for a bit, on the highway perhaps,
right,
and then but it goes by pretty quickly, and so you'll be having a conversation, then you're like, oh no, I've missed the exit. I've missed the exit. So it can be a little bit of a challenge, but no, it was so much fun. Hoping to do it again this year if the opportunity comes up.
So are there, I suppose, well, how do you deal with the different angles of corners? Because there's going to be some right-handed 90 degrees and 100 degrees.
Yeah.
So there's different names for the different corners.
Yeah, so I mean, the way that this rally actually works is you don't get to do a recce or anything. So you get given notes which have been done by a professional rally driver, but they're not like 100% bang on, So some corners you think, that wasn't a 2, that was actually a 3, and but by the time it's happened, it's gone, and you're not going to do the stage again. So you have to be quite reactive. And so you can either do 5 fastest or 1 fastest. So I remember the first year, Philip wanted to use one fastest. So that would basically, the way he would think of it is like, let's say 1 o'clock on the wheel, that's how much turn that you need so it's a fast corner. And then 5 would be a tight corner, really tight. And then a hairpin would be obviously a hairpin. Then you've got like, if you say 5, traditionally you would use 5 fastest. So it will correspond a little bit to the gears that you're using. It'll give you a good idea as to, that sort of thing. But, there were some sections you go through, and the timing and the delivery of the co-driver is so important. And this was something I never, you think of it, it's like, oh, it's just reading. It's like, it really isn't, because, you're in the car. So one, you've got to be a good passenger. Okay. The second point is, you need to be a quick thinker, but then also very calm, because you'll be going through a corner. I mean, we went through some ridiculous like corners, like fast, and getting oversteer, and then it's uneven surface, and you have to pace your timing while keeping where you are, because if you're going to call a 5 right, which is fast corner, and actually it's a 2 right, you're going to end up in the hedge, which did happen once. My fault. That's a really good story, but yeah. So yeah, you have to be really good with the delivery. And I remember my first year, because I used to play Colin McRae Rally on PlayStation 2,
yeah,
right, which was an epic game. It was an epic game, and from that you'd literally there was the voice, the co-driver voice, and it used to be like this. It would be like 3, 2, 1. 3 right, into hairpin left, into 3 right, and it would be very computerized. But the weird thing was, the first year that I was doing this co-driving, I couldn't get it out of me. so I'd go from having this conversation with Philip, we'd be in the car, we'd be driving, and then we get to the stage and stuff, and then I would just turn into this 3, 2, 1. And I couldn't stop it. And so after the first stage, he's like, Dad, is it possible that you can make it a little bit more flowy, a bit more conversational, a little bit, And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll try. Yeah. And I got to the next stage, I couldn't get it out of me. And it wasn't until the second year we did it together. And then the second year we were in a Porsche 3-liter RS, and I managed to get it to that point. But I did that through listening to a lot of the Nicky Grist, Colin McRae videos. Right. So you could hear how, Nicky was just unbelievable, because he'd be sat there with Colin and they'd be going through these mental fast corners, and and Nicky's just there, just conversation. So it's 3 right, into 2 left, into 1 right. It's just, and it would just work really nicely together. It's all super calm, even though they're basically going through a bridge at God knows how many miles an hour. It's just calm and delivery. And then if Colin says, oh, I need that a little bit, they work together.
Right.
So I listened to a lot of those videos. And then the next time I went back, thankfully, my pace notes, my calls were better. It wasn't so robotic. But yeah, epic times, and a really interesting insight into the world of rally, while having such great fun, going around Italy in some beautiful cars and meeting some awesome people.
The adrenaline rush must be so different, because like you said, you're basically driving the car through, verbally, through words, and putting your complete trust with the driver that he's going to do exactly what you say. And at the same time, you've got to keep it calm. So you're reading for your life, basically.
Yeah. What you said is exactly it. And that is, you're effectively, I'd say you're the composer. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, and if you have that good trust with your driver and the driver trusts you, it's a very big compliment in that, because you're in, the first year we did it, we were in an original Lancia Stratos, which didn't have a proper roll cage and was all original. Okay. It was pretty insane. So much fun. Everyone thought that we were kind of crazy, and we were a bit crazy, but we were winning. So, but there was one time where, I think it was day 4 of the rally, and I'd really I was getting to grips with it, and Philip was driving really well, and we were on this epic stage. We were flying, absolutely flying. And then we got to like a really fast bit where we had 3, 4, 4. It was getting quick, and I was just a little bit off, and I called something which was wrong. But it was like, what happened in my mind was this. It was like, oh, that was wrong. Oh, but it's okay. It doesn't matter. It wasn't important.
I'm still alive.
So, yeah, I'm still alive. But then just those 0.2 of a second where your brain processes that, I then missed the next one. And then so we got to, I called a 4 left, which would have been fast. And it was a hairpin left.
Oh,
and so we went in very, very fast, and we got stuck up a bank in this Stratos. We kind of got, and both Philip and I, we suffer with hay fever, so we had to wait on the side of the road in the Italian countryside, just crying basically from all the hay, and we waited 2 hours for collection, sort us out. We had the fire brigade there trying to, the guys helping us out, and then the funniest
fever.
Yeah, well,
used to cover up your mistake.
I know. Well, it was a bit of both, and then the funniest thing is we're standing there, the two of us on the side of a road, and the flatbed's there, and a Stratos just up a hedge, and then one of these Apple Maps cars in the middle of the Italian countryside just drives past with its 360 camera. So somewhere on Apple Maps there is going to be a Stratos in a hedge. I mean, the chances just unreal.
We definitely have to find that.
No, it was so much fun. We really, really enjoyed that. But yeah, you have to be a quick thinker and you have to be relaxed. So respect to any co-driver and driver parent who do this stuff. It's so much fun.
So is it I want to know the difference between the adrenaline rush from a single seater, because that's the main series that you've been racing all these years very successfully.
Yeah.
Is it different, or is it similar but in a different area of your body and brain?
It is entirely different, because the thing is, when you are driving a car, and take a single seater, so to be quick in a single seater, you need good technique, and you'll carry a speed through fast corners, but like nothing's, let's say nothing's, not much is too crazy, because you're in control of it. And me as a driver, like I've never been like a crazy or reckless or a driver who makes mistakes or anything like this, or not big mistakes, touch wood. So it's all kind of controlled in that sense. But then the moment you're in a rally car where you don't know the surface, you don't know what's coming, you don't know if it's going to be a little bit wet, or if there's a tree, which, there's a little bit of dew under the trees, and, and are the pace notes, are they actually correct? Is that surface actually rough? Is it, and the driver is driving, and Philip, he has an exceptional feel, especially on the brakes. So he's very, very, very strong on the brakes. So for me, we all have our internal speed sensors, and so I'm a driver who I'm trying to maximize the entry, the mid, and the exit, as a lot of pros do. But like someone like Philip, he's really 11 out of 10 on the entry. Okay, so my speed sensor's going, that's too late. That's too late. That's too late. But so you have to train yourself to, trust your driver, because and I trust Philip implicitly with that sort of thing, so that he can, brake the car efficiently, and that we're not going to we might have some oversteering moments. We'll have a lot of fun, but we're not going to, have an off or anything like this. So you have to train yourself that. But from a thrill point of view, the only way I can think of it is like it's a roller coaster ride which you are directing. So the thrill is much greater, because sure, it's of course it's fun racing on track. It's fun driving Lamborghinis, it's fun driving Formula 2 cars. It's fun, but this is like it's also very I say it's emotional as well, because you come through, you build this relationship with your driver, and you'll come through it. You'll be tired, it's busy, rallies are intense. And the rally which I did at Montecentore, it's not even one of the intense ones. It's not. You look at like Millimiglia, things like this. They're much more intense. But for someone new to it, it was really quite an eye opener.
I mean, that's great how you describe it, because it's always been that bone of contention, hasn't it, between motorsport fans, is F1 or rally. And it's like, people think rally, you just put your foot down and glide through the course. That's it.
Yeah,
F1, there's
yeah,
a lot more strategy. You've got to use your brakes. You've got to balance it out.
yeah.
But you've just given an absolutely fantastic inside description of the intricacies of rally racing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah. I mean, it's. I'm just so thankful that Philip got me into this stuff, because before I was so focused on F1 and GT racing, and it was all circuit, and then all of a sudden he's getting me into Cobras and Lancias and all these historic cars, the rally stuff, and there's just. I mean, I've always been a MotoGP guy, so I love motorbikes. I love any kind of racing, but the fact that he got me into all of these more sort of classic cars, I'm so thankful for, because I absolutely love it. It's so much fun.
So basically, to all the other race drivers out there, you can't knock rallying until you've tried it.
100%, 100%, and that's that comes from me, who turned up with like a neon yellow and blue modern racing suit going to a rally, and everyone taking the mick out of me, because it's kind of that cliche, right? But I kind of became immersed in the world and loved it.
Fantastic, fantastic. And yeah, I mean, like I mentioned before, the main series that you've been racing in since you were young are single seaters. You had some success in the UK and when you were younger, and then you decided to leave the UK, leave Europe, pack everything up, and move to Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And I mean, you hardly had anything behind you. You didn't have any money. So what was behind the decision for you to pack everything up in the UK and get into Hong Kong for motorsport?
Yeah, I mean, racing in the UK was great. I really enjoyed it. This was going back to 2009, 10, and 11. But as we all know, motorsport it's an expensive sport, right? I came from a family who, I'd say I had enough to have a nice life, but not in motorsport terms, if that makes sense. Yeah. So my dad was able to kind of help me fund a little bit of karting, 6 months of karting, some Club Formula Ford. And then I was picked up by Racing Steps Foundation, who, supported my entry into Formula Renault UK. And then, once I lost that funding, we tried to do something in the UK, and I finished second in the Winter Series in Formula Renault. Get guys like Carlos Sainz, Daniil Kvyat, and Oliver Rowland, people like this. And so I had that result behind me. I finished second in the championship, but beat Kvyat, and then it was a question of okay, where do I go now? And it came out of it, it was a bit left field. I started raising money on Twitter. So this was a really big thing, and trying to just network as much as I possibly could. And on the back of that, I had a Hong Kong racing team get in touch, and they were like, "Oh, we want a European driver to come over to Asia and win for us. We're willing to make things work." And long story short, I moved over to Hong Kong with not much to my name. It was around about £1,000, and just started networking, meeting people. And I was just this 19, 20-year-old kid. And people used to look at me a little bit funny, because I'd literally just rock up and be like, right, not got anything, but I need a place to live, need to do this, need to do that. And, the team I was racing for, KCMG, they were very, very supportive. And yeah, I went, raced against Giovinazzi and the Formula Plotter Championship back in those days, and managed to make a career out of it, which, when I look back and I think of the odds and the amount of trials and tribulations we went through, what a crazy time.
You had you got a partner, right? A strategic partner involved, and you still have those guys, right, today?
Yeah, so I mean, without the support of like KCMG, I raced for like 2012, 13, 14,
A
15,
legendary Asian race.
16. Yeah, yeah. And so they were very supportive. I don't race with them anymore. I think the last one I did with them was 2016 or so. But yeah, I had a lot of people, sort of help and support me get into, Macau Grand Prix, Formula 3, winning the Asian Formula Renault Championship. And,
That was sorry, that was winning 10 out of 12 races.
Yeah, that was one of those 2015 best year of my life. It was just one of those things where everything just worked, and I was yeah, it was just one of those really special years where kind of anything and everything happened, but it was all good stuff. And then I got the World Series test on the back of that, which was to date the fastest car I've ever driven. That was superb at Motorland Aragon, and then after that was a bit of a dip, and then I had to kind of rebuild after the dip. But that's what life is about. So,
I mean, your story is very inspirational especially for young drivers. I mean, moving to a completely new continent with not much behind you and basically having to start from scratch completely. But that's the other thing about you. You have a very good business brain. And one thing I've admired about you, which I think every race driver should have this, is the entrepreneurial brain, because motorsport is a business, as we know. And you can be fantastic on the circuit, you can be super fast, you can be winning everything. But if you don't have a business brain, then that's a recipe for disaster, or not accomplishing everything you want to accomplish.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. You have to. I mean, there's loads of different ways. I said there's loads of different ways to skin a cat. So previous to my racing career, I was a politics and economics guy. So I was top 10 in the UK at college level. And I was kind of destined to go down this path, which was, economics and politics and university and all that kind of stuff. And then, the racing bug bit me, and I was like, you know what, this is my passion. And, the world needs people to do what they love and, to make it happen. I think that's everyone's responsibility, is to find what they love and what they're here on this earth to do. And for me, that was motorsport. And so I knew it, the first time I sat in a go-kart, and then, I managed to make that work. But I knew that, what I didn't have in financial backing or through, family side, I had a very supportive family. And, of course, there's the financial element, which wasn't much in motorsport terms, but it was still, my parents had to remortgage the house. Wow. That's support. But then on the human side, the fact that at one point, my entire family came out to Hong Kong to actually help me with what I was trying to do. And I've had a lot of people, involved in that support, and put their time and energy into helping me. And, without that, I wouldn't have been able to do it. And so, for me, it was always a case of it had to make, let's say, business sense. I had to find a way to make this work. And, if you look at things in the grand scheme of things at the beginning and say, okay, I need to do, everything I now know what entails. Yeah, that's tough. I'm glad I'm at this end of it now than at the beginning of it. Right. Certainly in these days, because it wouldn't be possible now, obviously. But.
Yeah, because you didn't have a manager. You did your PR all yourself.
Well, I did have, so in 2011, 12, I did have a manager. So I was managed by BAM Motorsports, who actually kind of, let's say, brought the whole KCMG connection into it, and all through Twitter. That was kind of, let's say, a spider web there, which kind of came together and made that work. And and then I left their management. I think it was end of 12, something like that. But so it was only, let's say, a space of a year and a half. I think it wasn't long. But then and then after that, yeah, I managed everything myself from that point on.
So would you say that your experiences and having to look after yourself from the start, that's developed your motorsport business brain to the point where now you can use that experience and knowledge to now take on the management and coaching aspect for younger drivers?
Yeah, I mean, there's uh, 10 years, my 20s, basically, there was a lot of very, very trying times. I've had some really bizarre, amazing, risky, you name it. There's been some really interesting times. So that's a lot of life lessons to fit into what was really an intense period of 2012 to, let's say 2015. And then there was, I'd say my second phase and sort of like 17, 18, which was a kind of rebuilding process. But yeah, the amount of life lessons which you do get from that, it stands you in good stead for anything that you want to do. And so, now I'm 30 now. I'll be 31 next in May.
And
but
married as well.
And married, I know, and married. So, this is kind of the next stage where I'm going to take all of that experience, everything that I've kind of learned, all those life lessons, and move forward. But, yeah, definitely having the wife helps with those sorts of things as well. They keep you nice on track, to make sure that you're doing the right things and going in the right direction. So, yeah, without my wife, it would be maybe not entirely the same story.
Never thought it would happen, Dan. I never thought. I think most of the Asian motorsport community was in shock there with the announcement of marriage.
Yeah.
Dan was getting married. Bloody hell!
I know. No, I'm very lucky because Phoebe and I, we met would have been 2017, and yeah, it was just bizarre because she's actually in a part of a group of friends who I was like hanging out with a lot over a period of 5 years, right. But we never met each other. So we had this bizarre thing, and then one day, it was actually a Tinder meet for how I met my wife, and then since April 2017, we've been together, and yeah, we got married in 2020 during the COVID lockdowns here in Hong Kong.
Nice one. So when you were coming over, excuse me, you've got to have a business plan. You've got to have a career set out, and something that Peter and I have always touched on, and I was talking to Miko Nassi the other day, is that there's got to be that point, especially with young drivers, where you've got to make the decision whether this is a hobby or whether it's a career.
Yeah.
What were your aspirations leaving Hong Kong and leaving the UK, coming to Hong Kong and racing in single seaters? Was F1 the ultimate goal there?
Yeah, I mean, I was so focused on one thing and one thing only. And this is a really interesting topic because I think this can be communicated better, let's say, for young drivers out there. I remember, yeah, I came over here and I wanted to get to F1. That was my only kind of dream, and single seaters was everything. So it was going to be, this, it was going to be F3, it was going to be, GP2, all of these things. And I was very, very focused on that. Once, I think it was 2016, I think it was when I kind of, let's say, woke up, realized that was just a dream. Yeah. Right. Then I had this whole kind of, let's say, rebuilding process, which took place over two or 3 years. And I'm much happier for it. The funny thing is, at the time, I remember, I had some very good team managers like, John O'Hara, who was at KCMG, no nonsense, Irish guy, great guy. And I think back on things which he told me then, but then I'm like this 21-year-old kid who's just everything's F1, F1, F1. Single seaters, got to do this, got to do it, and like there's this, I say impatience. There's this feeling which you have about you, which is like you just want. It's not good, and thankfully I'm now at the point where I'm entirely relaxed and. I can take that experience, and then you can see it in young drivers now. And, some are really mature. This is why I kind of respect guys who come into F1 at the moment who are young, 17, 18 years old, when they have the wherewithal, the presence of mind, to do everything on the steering wheel, for example, because these days the cars are so complex, but then, everything racing, driving wise, okay. But the human side of things, that is really quite something. And so, because I know I wasn't able to do that. I took a long time to mature and get through that phase. And yeah, so I'm kind of, I'm very happy with, I am where I'm meant to be, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
But, a lot of drivers, they would have quit long before this point. You see a lot of drivers, they come through and they say they want to do this, and then it's like, oh no, I'm leaving. I'm leaving motorsport. I was never going to, let's say, leave either let's say the driving sooner than where I am at the moment, or anything else. So I was pretty dedicated to the cause in that sense.
Yeah. When you're saying the human aspect, do you mean the mentality of it, handling the stress, or the ability to attract the funds, and you've got to carry yourself in a particular way?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of both, really. But if you think, an F1 team has, let's say 600, 700, 800 people, however many people are in that organization, the driver is a focus point for that, right? And so you have to be able to, if you're going to be a world champion, or you're going to be a very good Formula One driver, you need to be able to motivate people. You need to understand different people. Yeah. You need to be able to kind of like figure people have different motivations, and how to get the best out of people, even if some people don't work particularly well together, or maybe you don't work particularly well with them, or you don't like them, or, all of these little different things, which is all about being human. And experience is a lot of that for a lot of people. But when you have these young guys, and I'm thinking of like Lando Norris, George Russell, Alex Albon, these are young guys who, I don't care if their dads are rich or they're this, that, the other. As people, they're very impressive people, amazing drivers. And, you have this new wave of Formula One, which is kind of, let's say, it's a bit more fun. These guys are able to have a little bit of a laugh, a joke, and, while being professional. And, and I just really respect that. I think that's really quite, something, because the enjoyment thing is, a lot of the drivers I work with, I tell them, it's like, enjoy it. Yeah. Don't forget to enjoy it. Even if you've got to do all these things, like, enjoy, because if you enjoy it, you're going to do well regardless. So, you should never forget, the privileged position that we're in to race these cars. And, yeah, so it's really quite something seeing that the last few years.
Yeah, I think it's important for young drivers to realize that Formula One isn't the be-all and end-all with motorsport. And through AMD, the motorsport marketing business I was running, that was a major conversation with parents and kids, because, yeah, you are competing against thousands of other young drivers. You've got to be based in Europe. You've got to have a big enough wallet. And the thing is, you can have a really successful career in GT racing. And I think a lot of kids need to realize that is don't put Formula One on the pedestal, and don't base your whole racing life with that number one goal, because it's going to end in tears.
Yeah.
You can have, I mean, look at yourself, look at the likes of Bamber, Richard Bradley. These guys are, as a GT racer, you could be competing for a team, driving a Ferrari in America one month, then traveling to Europe and driving a Porsche in another series the next month. you can be doing anything you want as a GT driver. You can even be making a salary as a GT
Yeah.
driver.
Yeah.
But whereas Formula One, it's so restrictive that even when you get into F1, you're very limited as to what you can do. And I mean, unlike the 60s, I mean, in the 1960s, Formula One drivers were doing Le Mans, 24 hours, the Indy 500, Formula 2, Formula 3, everything in between their races. But these days, I mean, Bernie Ecclestone had put, I think it was the British Grand Prix or one of the Grand Prix on the same weekend as the Le Mans 24 hour so that none of the
Yeah.
Formula One drivers would compete.
Yeah.
Le Mans
Yeah.
24 hour.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you got like this kind of, let's say it's the blinkers, where everyone's focused on F1 or as a young driver. And when you place all of your value and your reason for being, let's say, on an external thing, which, it's generally, it's not gonna bring you happiness. And it's probably, you'll have some guys who are really, talented, focused, everything about one, and they're kind of destined to get there, so there are a few of these guys around. You think Lewis Hamilton, he was really one of them in that sense, but not to say that it's preordained, but they have this opportunity and they take it, but that's who they are. They're not pretending to be anyone else. They're not trying for something. That's just them. And I think that a lot of drivers, ego gets in the way of a lot of it, because you do see even now these days, some drivers will jump into a car, they'll come out of single seaters, maybe they'll come into GT, and because they're maybe half a second off where they thought they'd be, and then they just leave, and they're like, oh, I don't want to drive this, and they won't work with anything. I think once you get the drivers to let go of that kind of ego thing, that, oh, I want to drive single seaters and I want to be known as a racing driver, and it's really quite an interesting topic, and you can kind of see it, and it comes across through the sort of, let's say, the personality thing. But I think motorsport's great because you learn a lot about yourself. You get a lot of feedback. Not everyone says it to your face. I appreciate people who do say it to your face, and I'm fortunate enough I had people in my life who would take me to one side and say, this is this is that, and you hurt at the time because your ego is hurting, but once you let go of that and you kind of come through that phase, then you go, oh shit, yeah. It's an entirely different color fish. It just changes your world in that sense. So I think there's so many great opportunities out there in GT racing, but it's not even maybe on the racing side, but it could be engineering, it could be team management, it could be sponsorship side. There's a whole host of things which you learn, and you can then transfer out, because if let's say that motorsport ceased to exist, and I could take all these skills and I could go into a company, I could do something, I could do something else using these skills. And I think that motorsport is a really great starting place for a lot of these young guys and girls who are coming into it. That's going to be really setting themselves up for life in a good way.
Yeah, and that's what Peter Burns is working on as well, is the team, the TEAM aspect of taking what you've learned in motorsport or how you operate a Formula One team or a racing team in general, and putting that into your business life, corporate way. Do you, with your coaching, are you focusing more on the gentleman racers, or have you been looking after young kids as well?
I'm a bit, let's say, on the whole spectrum. So, I've got clients who are, let's say, gentleman racers, in the sense that, guys who are, let's say, bronze drivers who want to learn how to race cars and, want to go about their racing on track in real life. So I have that aspect. I've then got like young aspiring professionals who, I coach, and, people who maybe want to do a similar thing to what I've done in their region, perhaps. And then also, on the younger side, I mean, before the travel restrictions and stuff, I was working a lot with young drivers. These days, slightly less so, but, I do have some clients. I have one client at the moment who's, 15, 16 years old. He got one of our simulators. He's mega talented. He used to do a bit of karting in Zhuhai, for example, but he hasn't been able to get there for 2 years. So he's been really restricted in that development. But now, he's gone so well on the sim. He's going to be going to the UK. We've got an intensive program planned with him in the summer to get him into karting and single seaters and, to really kind of help his development. So, I kind of, let's say I'm non-discriminatory. I enjoy working with, young guys and aspiring pros and the guys who want to do it for fun as well. So, yeah, it keeps it interesting.
What kind of advice would you give a young kid who's in karting and has the aspirations to get to the top? This is sort of falling back on what we were talking about before, about not putting F1 on a pedestal. But to sum that up, what kind of advice would you give the young drivers today?
There's a lot of advice, I think, which could be given out for young drivers. Very much depends on who, what, where. But I would say, some of the main things would be don't be too fixated on one thing, because what you have planned, it could actually not be the best for you, and maybe something else is going to come up which would be a better option. But if you're close to that, then it's, I remember I had times in my career where I had an option, or there was a potential thing, and I was like, no, I'm not interested. And then I look back at it and I'm like, fuck, that was an amazing opportunity. Why didn't I say yes to that?
Yeah.
So, I'd say be open to everything. Any car, you get an opportunity, go for it and go in with an open mind. Listen, try and get good people around you. Because you will have some people and maybe they're only interested in how much money they can get out of you. You've got that side of motorsport. Then you'll have other people who will be genuine in their advice and want to help and guide you. But once you kind of build this, let's say circle around you, use them, listen to them, while also, remaining true to yourself. Because if you feel like, you need to have that self-determined, you have to be self-determined. You have to be kind of have that grit, that determination. If you don't have that, then you're not going to be successful anyway. So, I say that's just a couple of sort of things for young guys coming through. And also, work hard. Because you do see some drivers who are like mega talented, but it didn't work that hard. And if they had just worked a little bit harder or been a bit more open in one way or another, they could have been professional. But it's a tough sport, but at the end of the day, the way I look at it is if you wait around at the barbershop long enough, you're going to get your hair cut. And, it's a funny one, but it's true. So if you want to make something happen, generally you will. But you have to work for it. Well,
that's a very good point. You've got to realize that motorsport is 80 odd % away from the circuit. I've written a book about strategic partnerships, motorsport sponsorship, which will be coming out soon. And I calculated, when you look at a race weekend in Asian motorsport, with your practice, 30 minutes of practice or an hour of practice, 30 minutes of qualifying, and then 2 races of 45 odd minutes.
Yeah.
The time you spend on the track itself competing is only a couple of hours.
Yeah.
And you're only doing that in Asia 5, 6, 7 weekends a year.
Yeah.
The other 7 days of the week, you've got to be working your ass off. That's where the business side comes in. You've got to be networking, trying to find the funds to continue next year, building your brand, public relations. It's the racing aspect of it itself is very, very small. For your,
I think I remember calculating it. It was less than 0.5% of the actual time which you put in, as a young driver when you're doing those things. It's not much.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking about business side of things, I mean, you're, like I said before, you're very entrepreneurial, and I see that you're doing something with simulators.
Yeah.
You started a simulator business.
Yeah, I mean, it's It's an interesting one, really, because how I got into motorsport was actually from driving my Logitech G27 on the like Live for Speed and some F1 games back in 2007-8.
Mm.
It's a very little known fact, but that's how my kind of passion, how I realized I was good. It's actually on a simulator. I used to go to a place in Chandler's Ford called the Race Centre. And one day there was Harry Ticknell there, who's, I think he's a factory driver. He's racing a lot in the States. And, I beat him at one of these like F3, race events. That's how I kind of started. I was like, oh, I really want to do this. So, coming back, over 10 years later, and in 2019, one of my clients basically said to me, I want the best simulator available. I did my due diligence. I started working to find out what's going to be the best option for him, visiting a lot of the workshops, a lot of the factories in the UK. That was the first simulator build, which was delivered October 2019.
Mm.
And then, of course, lockdown, the travel restrictions, 2020 in Hong Kong. And then the phone's just ringing, constantly. And the first one, the first simulator was for Philip, and he referred me to a lot of his friends and clients. And, that was huge for me, because I went from, 2020 having 22 races that year signed to like 2. So the simulators became very important. And on the back of that, it kind of, really built into a thing where, on the sim side, I'm the man to do certainly a lot of the Hong Kong stuff, and working with ProSim, who they provide the simulators for Lando Norris, Alex Albon, Carlos Sainz, Mick Schumacher, a lot of the GT drivers. They're the top simulators, and so it's been very busy. The last couple of years with that. And this year we have one sim arriving next week for a client. We just installed one last week in Hong Kong. And then we have a ridiculously cool one arriving very shortly, which is, a big one with, full motion and seatbelt tensioning devices and everything. It's exciting, but it's a good, here we go. This is one of the simulators for a client, which is, this is the Evolution GT, which is kind of, let's say, the top level GT simulator, right, with triple 55-inch gaming TVs. But you can see, so like the simulators themselves, these are, let's say it's built like a tank. Everything on it is best of best. But then also on the software side of things, and this is where I'm able to assist clients with setting up their simulators, because if you have the field of view wrong, or you have one of the settings wrong, or, the feedback, the tactile feedback isn't right, so taking the time and care to get everything perfect for each program as well. It's quite a time intensive thing. But it's really quite it's a joy to do, because you basically feel like you're driving a real car, and you can also work with your clients, to improve them as drivers. One of my guys started with me in 2019. He was 6.5-7 seconds off, on track, and then simulator. We worked to get that within, like the other day, he's now within a tenth of me, but on track, he's, he got to within half a second on track, and we won, the world final at the end of last year. So it's useful. It's a good tool, and I really, really enjoy working with the simulator side of things.
And you've said that it's a good entry point into motorsport. It's getting a lot more serious now these days, especially with the sim racing competitions that kind of blew up over the COVID lockdown period.
Yeah.
Is it still you're a strong believer that you can go for, even if someone hasn't even stepped foot in a real life race car?
Yeah.
But if they do have the skill in the simulator, do you think it is possible for them to have a successful career in real life racing?
Definitely. And the reason I say that is because, that was me. I never really publicized that much in the past because, 10, 15 years ago, no one wanted to be known as a guy who was, coming from the sim world. Nowadays, it's a lot more popular. But yeah, like I say, I mean, one of my clients, this 15-year-old kid, he's mega talented in the simulator. Really looking forward to getting him, over to the UK and do some karting and do some single-seater testing and see how he goes. Because from a natural talent perspective, he's got it in spades. But definitely, there's a lot more. The manufacturers are putting more money into the esports side of things. I've got some exciting announcements soon, actually, with regards to the esports side, which should be exciting. But yeah, it's great to work with. It's just certainly the year of 2020 and 21. I was doing the SRO esports in Asia. Managed to win one or two races, which the ones which I could compete. And yeah, it's you learn a lot. You learn a lot as well because the setup aspect. You have to work with Motec. You have to go through all the data. You have to engineer. Unless you have an engineer with you, you have to engineer your own car.
Yeah,
there's a lot to it which you do learn and corresponds to the real world.
True. And in terms of the competitions that are primarily based out of Asia, there's a few going. And I remember, we tried to get this the motorsport up and running back in 2016. I think we were a bit ahead of ourselves because some of the racing simulations couldn't quite do what we wanted to do from a marketing aspect anyway.
Yeah.
Have you competed in some of the Asian series, and do you think it's healthy? I mean, you hardly hear about them unless you're inside the community there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to change in time because it's just growing more and more because the entry level is so low, right? If you want to try and compete in motorsport, you need a lot of money. Simulators, a lot of these guys in Asia, they're using, I say, relatively entry level equipment. It's only going to cost them a few thousand, depending on what kind of thing they've got. But the barrier to entry is low, right. And then track time is unlimited. I remember, if you've got like e-racing GP, which was organized by Alex Young, I was doing a bit in 2020. So I met a lot of these guys in Asia who are racing, and there was proper production around it, so it was actually enjoyable to watch. And while people had nothing to do, it was growing a lot. SRO have now taken that, and they're going to the next level. So they have the European Championship this year, the Asian Championship, they have the American Championship, and then they have IGTCE. So that's really, they've got the pro class and silver class, and then they've got the commentary, they've got everything fully set up, taking the real world virtually. Yeah. And then the growth of that, esports, there's just, I think the next decade, it's just going to, increase more and more, what with, certainly if there's travel restrictions again, or even just to hedge against that sort of possibility. Because if you're a sponsor of a championship or you're a manufacturer or something, you're going to want to hedge against that. So by investing in esports, it's a good opportunity to attract a younger audience, and to be able to kind of provide extra value for your partners and for the fans watching at home.
I think it can be, to a degree, more valuable for sponsors to get involved into the esports arena because you have that direct access, but the viewer, the competitor, the customer has direct access to you because everything's in front of you. You can go straight to the sponsor's website and social media accounts and everything. Whereas watching it on TV or being at the track yourself, you're just looking at branding. That's all you're doing. There's no interaction there.
Yeah.
But with SRO getting involved, I mean, that's a massive motorsport organization. They're going to be hard to beat.
Yeah. I mean, they've got it very well organized with regards to all the tech, all of the they work with the Assetto Corsa Competizione, because you've got then balance of performance issues between manufacturers. It's a huge operation to run. something with different manufacturers where it's the level of what they're doing. But they do a good job with it, and they're able to kind of put that content out to their fan base, and they've even introduced real world points being based on what's happening on the virtual races as well. So there's more of this integration with the virtual world and the real world, which the only thing which I see for with the virtual stuff is there's no time limit. And that's where it can be difficult, because as a driver you can try so many different things, and then you can invest so much time. And if you do an event where you've, let's say, done 40 hours of preparation, then you get hit off in the first corner, it's mentally pretty challenging. Whereas of course with the real world stuff, you've done a test day, maybe 2 test days or something. It's not to the same sort of extremity.
What platform is SRO using?
So it's on Competizione ACC.
Okay. Yeah, that was. Would you say? Well, who would they're one of the top 3, right? You'd say.
Yeah.
AC, iRacing.
Yeah.
Would you put Race Room up there, or
Race Room's just I'd say a little bit behind that. Like it's very popular in Asia. From a physics point of view, I know that they did an update, I think last year, and it was actually pretty good because we use it for like the Dubai circuit, because they actually laser scan Dubai. Yeah, from a kind of, I mean, for our simulators, we always go with ACC, AC. We have our own custom ProSim software. And then, they're kind of an iRacing, of course, but they all have their own little kind of pros and cons. But certainly for what SRO are wanting to do, ACC kind of fits the bill perfectly for them.
Right. And in regards to the actual stimulator, do yours have hydraulics, or are you against having the simulator moving up and down? Does that add anything, or does it actually take something away from the reality?
Well, this is a really interesting question, because everything we do for the simulators, whatever we put on, has to be a benefit. Okay. And we test all these different products, and we constantly refine it so that it is the best that it could possibly be and the most realistic. But recently I've had one customer who was very I'd say insistent. He wanted the moving platform. And I've just had another one yesterday, actually, the same thing, very keen on the moving platform. And so it's a question of how do you integrate that, because the moving platform itself is expensive. If money is not an object, then that's fine. But like with the G-force, what happens is, if you're in a real car and you're experiencing, let's say 3G, you're going, your whole body is going forwards and you can feel that. And then let's say it's backwards, you can feel that. It's going to be sustained. The G-force is sustained.
Yeah.
With anything you see online, which is like on a big thing, which is kind of going like, this, that's not realistic. Maybe it looks good at a trade show or something, but the moment it dips like that, which it never, your body doesn't dip like that anyway. But the moment it does that, you've then got no sustaining of the G. Okay. So it's useless information, and your brain, if you're trying to simulate reality in order to test so that this simulator is good for race drivers, then you want it to be close. So what we do with the movement is we put it on a moving platform, which effectively moves this side to side as well, but it's not huge, and it will give you kind of, let's say you pop your front right over a curb, you'll feel that curb. Okay. Right. So it's consistent to real life. But I know I've heard of some F1 teams who actually have like a full moving thing, which is let's multi-million. That's fine, that's good, because they're going to be trying to simulate it as best as possible. But if you want to put something at home which is realistic, we'd say if we can do it, let's say financially, we would put it on this platform so that we get that extra bit. Because as standard, we run with tactile feedback, where basically you'll feel through the seat, like curbing, engine gear shifts, and like it's really, really nice to give the feedback as to what it is in real life. But if you want that extra sensation of a little bit of movement with the once you kind of put your front right over a curb, this sort of thing, it just adds that extra depth. Then that's superb as well. But but yeah, anything which is kind of a little bit, too much, and yeah, it's not right, let's say.
And you put a lot of pressure through the steering wheel as well, right? There's a lot of
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because we can simulate up to like a 27 Newton meters on the wheel. So, if you want to drive the equivalent, let's say Formula 2 car, which is really heavy steering, or let's say that you want to train for that, so you want to go above, what an F2 wheel is, then we can do that. And the simulators themselves, they're so, let's say, rock solid. Nothing moves on the thing. And the pedal itself is a proper racing pedal. It's all designed by ProSim, and we can adapt everything. So if you want to change the pad knock off, you want to change the feel, there is hundreds of different customizations to get it to what you want. And so that's something where, when it comes to testing, I have one client, he's like, oh, actually, I want it to be a little bit, can you do this? Can I have a little bit more knockoff? Can I, but everything we can change. And, we're able to provide that service where, let's say it's a VIP concierge service where it's like, oh, I want this particular thing to be done. Yeah, no worries, we'll do it for you. So it's really enjoyable working with people who know what they want in a particular thing and are particular about these things, because we're constantly refining and making the simulators literally the best that they can possibly be. And that's why we're so busy.
You are. I mean, you're so consistent with posting on social media, the new clients that you're getting. It seems like your business is doing very well. And I mean, you're certainly the only simulator provider I know in Asia that you're doing a better job at marketing, really.
Yeah.
The just heading as we start to close down, you've been in Asian motorsport for 10 odd years now.
Yeah.
And I mean, the last 2 years have been very bad for Asian motorsport. Basically, the industry was shut down during COVID, but this year things are picking up, and we've gone back to racing. Is there anything that you think is? I mean, how do you think the Asian motorsport industry is now, considering you've been here for 10 years? Have you seen any productive growth? Do you think it's been on a plateau for a while, and do you think there needs to be any changes, and what would you suggest?
I mean, Asian motorsport it's been such a great passion of mine because, one, I love Asia. Two, I love travel. And, in the days when you'd be Sepang one day, you go over, you'd have Macau, you'd have this, you'd have all these different things, it was such a lifestyle, which was, Europe's cool, but just loved Asia. When I first came over in 2012, my first track was Zhuhai, and then my first race event was Shanghai. And we went out, they green flagged it, but then there was like cones everywhere around the track and like weird stuff, things which he gradually didn't happen. It got better and better. So from 2012, like it became more and more professional, bigger, better, to the point that organizationally there was a lot of things which were actually better than Europe. When Top Speed came in and started organizing Asian and F3 and these things, like that was proper, and that was great to be involved with, and it was great to see the new circuits. So the development, I think it was really kind of getting really, really better and better, and it was nice to kind of see that growth and be part of that growth. The issue we have now, which everyone in Asia has, is travel restrictions. It's been 2 years that we haven't been able to travel within Asia. And so how, motorsport cannot exist in a world where you cannot travel. It just can't. And when you have 2 years of these travel restrictions, no one can plan, because let's say that, at the end of this year, it all opens up. Well, it's too quick to be able to try and organize a whole championship, and no one has any, people will have moved, people have done this, you lose talent, people go to Europe, people go to America, it won't be able to just come back. And so, great news what we're hearing, Malaysia's supposedly meant to be opening properly, I think April the 1st.
Yeah.
That's a really good step because, I have clients, Singapore-based clients, people who want to go testing in Sepang, and, it's difficult. And, from a business model like China, I organized a track day in China a couple of months ago. It was an absolute nightmare trying to organize. Just because of all these QR codes you needed for, everyone and guests, and it makes doing business very, very difficult. So it's a real shame that, we kind of reached this thing where it was mega, because you'd be Japan, you'd be Malaysia, you'd be, everywhere, and things were growing. It was all going in the right direction. But the challenge which Asian Motorsport has now is, even if we do get to a point, I mean, Hong Kong here, we still have 2-week hotel quarantines. That's not changing anytime soon.
Yeah.
There's a lot of drivers in Hong Kong. If they can't travel, you don't have a GT series, you could happen within Japan, like what with the UK, it has enough tracks that they can do it. And that's good, but that's going to be very, just solely over there in Japan. And so, but even let's say that we do move Asia to a point where you can travel again, the question is, like, are manufacturers and sponsors and partners going to be interested to invest when, if we have another thing in a couple of years' time, everything goes down again? So Asia has a really big issue from a motorsport perspective. So what you'll start to see is, I think, Malaysia will just have Malaysia. The guys from Singapore maybe can come down there and they can do some driving. Japan will stay Japan, China will stay China. But the idea of a, cross-border Asian racing platform, I don't see for a little while, which is really unfortunate to say, because it had gone, like, as I said, it was really kind of developed so much so quickly over the last 10 years.
Are you talking, excuse me, are you talking 1 to 2 years?
I'd love to say that. But like I say, if you were organizing a championship and you're a manufacturer, you want to see that, things to be able to plan shipping, to be able to put the money in, to have the confidence from the manufacturer to be able to do this, and So, you want at least 9 months probably to have that in place. But, that's going to be from the point that every country will be open. And I don't see every country in Asia being open for many years. So not just 1 to 2. I hope I'm wrong in that. But, I think Asian Motorsport has to kind of plan for the idea that everything will be local. And so, yeah, it will just be within the countries which do have circuits. And, so Japan will be safe in that sense. Japanese motorsport will be strong. But Chinese motorsport will have, question marks. If they get cases, they close down tracks immediately. You can't run businesses, you can't run livelihoods on that sort of system. So it will be a really interesting few years to see. I mean, I'm happy to see, America and Europe is going really strong. People, of course, they want to come back. They want to race cars. I know a lot of guys in Hong Kong. I mean, one of my friends, Antares, he went and raced, last year, this year, he did Asian Le Mans. Another Hong Kong friend here, he went to Asian Le Mans and he's doing the quarantines. So there's guys who, they're doing the quarantines for it and they're going to race, but they're going to race in Europe.
Yeah.
And so, I just hope we can get to a point that one day we can go back to where we were with Asia so that it can rebuild. But you will have a lot of loss of talent, to the Americas and to Europe.
True. Yeah, I want to get Davide from Top Speed on, and it'd be interesting to hear from Benjamin Fransonovici at SRO as well.
Yeah.
On this,
Yeah.
because I was expecting some kind of announcement from Top Speed and SRO now that we know that Malaysia is going to be reopening in April. But yeah, you've made quite a few good points there in terms of even though the borders are opened, everyone who is competing have left the region themselves. So it's leaving Europe and America and coming in and financing the whole thing. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It'd be really interesting to hear from them because, I mean, they do a super job with, their respective championships. And of course, Davide, he had to divert and race with, in the Middle East, which I've been part of, the last few years. And, that's great to see that happening. So at least you have, Asian F3 continuing, even if it's Dubai and Abu Dhabi, but they do a super job to put that on. But then all of their staff, they go back to 3-week quarantines, and it's a challenge from that side. But they've done a super job with how they've kind of managed this difficult period.
True. Now there's a little bit of fun here that I want to do with my guests. It's kind of my version of this or that, or would you rather.
Okay.
I'm going to throw you a couple of options, and you shoot me your preferred option, and we can discuss it.
Okay.
There might be some controversy in here.
Okay, go on, shoot.
I did delete this earlier, but you did touch on it before. So this I call it to pit or to stay out. So our first one, F1 or MotoGP?
Do I have to answer quickly?
No. We got all the time in the world. And you don't have to be diplomatic as well.
Yeah, okay. I would go F1.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is a tough one, isn't it? Because there's two different aspects. There's the racing side of it.
Yeah.
And then there's just the whole history and strategy behind it.
This is this thing, like, so F1 is where I was kind of originally, so into. MotoGP I got heavily into from like 2012. And I'm like the biggest Rossi fan. Of course, now Rossi's left. Like, I watched the race last week. Like, I love bikes. I love the fact that it's so, if you're watching cars go around and you're watching bikes go around, the bikes can come off at any moment, and like they could have like a serious issue. So they're really playing with danger with that line. Whereas, if a driver makes a small mistake, he just goes a bit wide. So it's not the same sort of like, if I was watching Rossi and he's like in a, I remember when he was winning, and the times when he maybe a chance for a podium, in his later years, and your just heart rate's just going like crazy because he could come off at any moment. But I love both, but I'd say F1.
Although MotoGP riders do have larger balls of steel than Formula One drivers.
100%. You have to. Yeah, something else.
Single seaters or GT racing?
Years ago I'd have said single seaters every day of the week, but now definitely GT racing because, the different manufacturers, the teammate element, the endurance side, the community, the fans. I'd say it wins hands down on
that. We might be able to predict your answer to this next one. Lewis or Max?
Oh, well, you'd say that. It's interesting because I'm not. You think of last year, right, with the F1, people would naturally assume that I was supporting Lewis. Like, I haven't. Lewis was, I supported Lewis in 2007 and all that sort of time. I was really like a Lewis fan. But then Jenson Button was actually who kind of solidified my sort of love of Formula One, and I liked his style. So I've not been a Lewis fan for, quite a few years. Last year, he impressed me a lot with how, I say, clever he was. He knew he didn't have the fastest car. I mean, that first half of the year, I don't compliment Lewis too much, but I was impressed. And then, the way he kind of went about closing out the championship, again, amazing. Max, I'm not like a natural fan of Max. I think it's cool. He like calls it the way he sees it, but I would go, I'd go Lewis just by a factor of kind of he's the one who got me into the sport. But I'm not like fully on the Lewis train in that respect. I'm relatively neutral on that.
How did you feel about Abu Dhabi?
Oh Lord, sorry, I couldn't quite hear you there. What? No. Yeah, it was.
Don't be diplomatic.
I was gonna say. It was. I would just say it's a shame how it went down, because it had been such a super year between both drivers, because I think both of them deserved it equally. And on the day, Lewis was ahead by, what was it, 15 seconds or something, even with the Perez, trying to slow him down, which was clever. Yeah, so I would have just preferred to see, either them red flag the race on lap 53, or, to let all the cars pass and then just take the green across the line, as, happened in, Nürburgring 2020. But yeah, I think both absolutely deserving champions. I think F1's got a really good sort of situation for this year, because the cars look, to be relatively close in performance. I think the top four, and hopefully that we can have an epic year of racing, which has less, let's say, of this kind of, let's say, politics on the back of it, and just kind of be hard racing, and may the best man win.
True. I think it was Pierre Gasly topped the timesheets in yesterday's practice in the AlphaTauri.
Yeah. I mean, all the cars, like, from the testing, I watched a few hours of Sky Sports F1 yesterday, just following the testing, and the cars seem to be, they look a little bit heavier, for sure. They do look a little bit heavier. But I think the McLaren looks to be in relatively good shape, even though they had some, heat, brake temperature issues. Mercedes, I think they've got a bit of a, I say a handful. They'll get it sorted, no doubt. Ferrari looks to be clean straight out of the box. It looks to be the most drivable of any of the cars out there. But it's interesting how, moving to the 18-inch tires, the ground effect, the effect on the braking, the extra weight, what that's doing. So you see a lot of these guys are locking up for a long time. They're not able to control the slip of the tire. Right. So that's going to create some really interesting racing situations this year. So I think the drivers, they might not enjoy it, driving them at the moment to the same extent as they did last year, but I'm sure the teams, they're very clever. They will figure it out so that their cars handle, pretty decent in the low speed as well. But yeah, it should be an exciting year, and the first race isn't far away at all now.
True. Next week or 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think it's next week, Bahrain Grand Prix.
So how about McLaren, Red Bull, or Mercedes?
Well, anyone who follows me, whether it's on the F1 Virtual Paddock Club or on Twitter, know I'm a McLaren fan, certainly, because, I got the McLaren Zoom background there. But yeah, I was, like I said, Jensen was who got me into, really solidified my interest in the sport. And he was driving for McLaren at the time. So even though, I was a Honda Braun fan, but the current Mercedes team, still decent, but it would be McLaren.
One more. This is why I asked you earlier at the start here. As a race driver on race weekend, breakfast of champions or not breakfast of champions on a race weekend?
Definitely not. It's a super question, actually. Drivers talk about this sort of strategy a lot, and we generally find, if it's on race weekend, anything from, sort of, let's say, Thursday onwards, you want to make sure that you're fully fired on track. So you'd have to decline.
So it's pasta over
exactly. Exactly. So definitely just making sure that any of your aggression stays so that you can use it all on the circuit.
Yeah, I'll throw that in mind. I think that'll be a regular question through the season.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see the answers to those ones, because I know people who do run different strategies, but that's always the one I found has worked best.
Well, on that note, Dan, it's been fantastic having you here. You've been absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much for your insight into rallying, simulator racing, and motorsport in general.
Yeah.
When does your European Lamborghini Super Trofeo season start?
So first test I think is March 29th, and then the first weekend is Imola, April I think April 1 to 3. So not far away now, and yeah, just looking forward to getting the year started.
All right, wonderful. Keep us posted with the simulator. We'll catch up during the year as well. We'll keep an eye on your progress. You've been fantastic. Good luck with everything.
Yeah, thank you
And
very much, Ben. It's been a real pleasure.
wonderful. Thank you very much. And we will see you next time and see you at the track soon, hopefully.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Ben.